Ladies and gentlemen, did you know that there has been an ongoing struggle in our world since, well, the beginning of time? A struggle between light and dark, good versus bad, hero versus villain. And arguably, in almost every single story that's ever been told, at least all the good ones, it is the villain that is far more important and interesting than their counterpart, the hero. However, I think there is one type of villain, one kind of archetype of villain, if you will, that I really think stands out above the rest. A villain that makes you question everything you know about your own morality. A villain that literally makes us, the audience, take a step back and go, hold up, wait a second. This guy might actually be onto something. AKA a justified villain. Hello everyone, I am Finn. Welcome back to Finn Films. Join me today as I am discussing why Abby from The Last of Us is one of my favorite villains, favorite antagonists of all time. A villain so good, a character who is so justified, it really makes you sit back and wonder, is this character even a villain at all? So across all forms of media throughout time, we have all different sorts of kind of types and archetypes of villains. You have the classic monster or the beast, a overwhelming force of nature, hell-bent on death and destruction that a protagonist must overcome. Think of the alien from the Alien series, Godzilla in the films, where the kaiju is actually depicted as being the bad guy, such as in Godzilla -1, or something like the massive killer shark in Steven Spielberg's Jaws. You have evil incarnate, a villain that is the personification of evil itself, and spreads darkness wherever it goes simply because it is its nature. Generally, this type of villain doesn't really have any kind of character motivation or justification for its actions, oftentimes being depicted as just evil at its core, the personification of evil. Typically, we see these villains in kind of classic fantasy like mythology or superhero series. Think of a character like Sauron from Lord of the Rings. Or maybe the Mastermind, a brilliant and calculating villain who uses their superior intellect and manipulative abilities to continually outsmart and anticipate the hero's moves, constantly taunting them and anticipating every single action from the shadows. Think of villains like James Moriarty from the Sherlock Holmes series, or even Light Yagami from the Death Note series. Yes, Light Yagami, the protagonist, is arguably the antagonist. Now, I could go on and on. There are like endless number of like villain archetypes throughout all sorts of media, throughout any type of media format. But for any villain that isn't a monster, I think that there is one real kind of major quality that is needed in order to make that villain a good villain. Justification. Think of like any like villain's origin story, and there is almost always some kind of like justification for the villain becoming a villain, for the villain committing acts that are considered evil. Whether it was something that happened to them that ultimately pushed them over the edge into this path of evil, into this path as an antagonist, or something that just motivates them to stand in opposition to the hero, the protagonist of the story. However, simply having this justification does not make them a justified villain. No, in my mind, a justified villain is a villain who at their core is actually correct in their goals or actions, but it is how they achieve this goal, ultimately how the ends justify the means, that actually make them this villain archetype, this actually making them evil. Which then puts us, the audience, in a moral dilemma, making us ask ourselves, do the ends justify the means for this character? Now, there are a ton of villains out there in some of my favorite works of media that I think really embody this type of villain, and I will most likely be making videos about them in the future. But for this video, I just want to start off with one specific villain, one of my favorite villains and antagonists that I think really embodies this archetype. A villain that broke the heart of Last of Us fans all around the world. The character Abby. Now, obviously, Abby as a character in The Last of Us are quite topical right now, as many people have been introduced to Abby probably for the first time, for people who didn't play the video games, in The Last of Us live-action HBO adaptation of this series, as Season 2 of HBO's The Last of Us recently ended just in the last week. And in my mind, Abby is one of the best examples of a justified villain, and one of my favorite antagonists from like any video game. A villain whose actions made the fan base absolutely despise her. I'm not joking, when The Last of Us Part 2, the video game, released, people hated the character of Abby so goddamn much, they literally sent the character's voice actress, Laura Bailey of Critical Role fame, insane abuse online and even death threats.
It's only a game. Why you have to be mad?
Yeah, talk about some insane terminally online behavior. Just to note, guys, if this isn't obvious, this video will contain spoilers for The Last of Us parts 1 and 2 of the video game, as well as for seasons 1 and 2 of the live action show. So the story of The Last of Us in a nutshell follows a hardened, cold man named Joel and a young, rambunctious teenager named Ellie, as they try to survive in a post-apocalyptic world filled with mushroom-infected like zombies. Joel is tasked with taking Ellie to a group of scientists, and it is revealed throughout the game that Ellie is immune to this cordyceps virus, and that potentially she could be the key to a cure. However, through this journey, Joel and Ellie slowly begin to develop a close bond and relationship, a father and daughter-like bond through their traumatic experiences. Joel, in his young age, at the start of the cordyceps virus, like 20 years prior to the events of The Last of Us, losing his daughter in an insane accident. The death of this young girl causing Joel to become cold and distant. Now, though, over this mission with Ellie, Joel has begun to feel these father-like instincts again, and has begun to love this girl as a daughter. Joel beginning to have second thoughts on this mission, once they finally get to the scientists in Salt Lake, and he learns that Ellie will not survive this procedure, a procedure that will use her immunity to ultimately make a cure for the cordyceps virus, and potentially cure everyone from this zombie infection. It is here then that Joel is in an impossible dilemma. He is forced to make an impossible decision. While Ellie is being prepped for surgery, Joel makes his way through the hospital, having decided that he will save her, systematically killing, murdering everyone. Joel being unable to sacrifice the girl that he now sees as his daughter, that he loves as his own child, even if that means denying the world a cure for this zombie-like virus. This is the origin story for the primary antagonists in The Last of Us Part 2, the video game, as well as Season 2 of the show, a character named Abby. Not long after these events take place, Abby arrives at Salt Lake, discovering the massacre that was left by Joel. Abby, we learn, is the daughter of the lead scientist, the man who is going to operate and create the cure from Ellie. And now here she stands, having her only family member taken away from her, the daughter forced to bury her own father. Abby swearing she will hunt down whoever did this, and ultimately get her revenge for this cold-blooded, heartless murder that has taken place. Now, we can already see the dynamic that The Last of Us has set up here. Over the course of the first video game, as well as Season 1 of the HBO series, we, the audience, have grown to love Ellie and Joel, and we are set up to be sympathetic to Joel's cause and to Joel's actions, as we just want to see these two characters ultimately live a peaceful, happy life together in this dogshit post-apocalyptic world. But suddenly, we are shown that their actions have consequences, brutal consequences, that ultimately all violence will have repercussion, and that from Abby's point of view, Joel's actions were nothing more than a series of cold-blooded killings. For years, Abby plans her revenge and tries to hunt down Joel, until finally her and her group, the former Fireflies, arrive at the settlement of Jackson, where Ellie and Joel have been living for the last few years. By sheer stroke of luck and even coincidence, Abby and her group managed to catch Joel out on patrol. Abby convincing Joel to come back to a ski lodge overlooking the town, Joel completely unaware of who Abby is and what her real intentions are, until it's too late. Abby turns on Joel, holding him at gunpoint as she reveals that she was a member of the Firefly organization, the same organization that the doctors and the soldiers that Joel killed at Salt Lake. As suddenly she turns, shooting Joel in the knee with a shotgun. She continues to speak to a monologue in classic antagonist fashion, recounting to Joel the horrible scenes that she discovered at Salt Lake, the dead 18 soldiers and the one unarmed doctor that Joel killed without even a second thought. Abby revealing that this doctor was her father, and that she was only 19 when it happened. Just a little girl who was now left alone in the world without the only person who cared for her. Abby tells Joel that she has been with a militia that goes by a code that they don't kill people who can't defend themselves. Abby saying that It doesn't matter though if someone has a code like her, or is a lawless piece of shit like Joel. There are just some things that everyone agrees are wrong. As she begins mercilessly beating Joel with a golf club, taking out her anger on him, Ellie manages to track Joel down, sneaking inside of the ski lodge. To her horror, seeing the strong man who became her father, the man who was her rock, her protector, lying beaten in a heap on the ground in front of her. It's then we get arguably what is the most, if not one of the most fucked up scenes in all of The Last of Us, as Ellie is forced to watch as Abby finally kills Joel. Abby repeating the cycle of violence that was started with Joel's actions in Salt Lake, as Ellie pledges that she is going to kill her one day. So yeah, kind of fucked up stuff, huh? But man, is this how you create a compelling, interesting villain and antagonist? And best of all, this is how you create a justified villain. You see, obviously, the video game and the show primes us to hate Abby. We are supposed to hate her and dislike her for this insanely violent and cruel actions, for killing a character that we as an audience truly care about and love. But the thing is, if you are honest with yourself, Abby is pretty insanely justified in her actions. I mean, it's kind of hard to agree with the brutal methods in which she ultimately achieves this revenge, but from a character motivation standpoint, it makes complete sense why Abby, a 19-year-old girl, would spend 4+ years searching for the man who murdered her father. As from her point of view, this murder was seemingly in cold blood and for no reason. However, the man that she is searching for, the man that she wants to take her revenge on, just so happens to be Joel, one of the most beloved characters from The Last of Us. So then, of course, we are supposed to hate Abby. In professional wrestling terms, Abby has the heel heat. The heel being the bad guy in the story between the heel and the babyface, the bad guy versus the good guy in a pro wrestling kind of metaphor. Abby very much being the heel, Abby being the antagonist that we, the audience, are supposed to dislike. I mean, she just killed everyone's favorite character in a brutal, fucked up way. So of course, she has to be the bad guy, the villain, the antagonist. So what does both the video game, The Last of Us Part 2, as well as the live-action series do? They force us to play and see Abby's point of view. They do this in the video game by making us, the player, actually play as her, and they do this in the show by putting Abby's perspective, her point of view, in the upcoming Season 3, which was teased at the end of Season 2. Yeah, that's right, the folks over at Naughty Dog literally are absolutely savage. You watch your favorite character die, and then the video game forces you to play as the woman that killed him. This is some actual up genius shit, and goddamn do I love it. Now, obviously, this pissed a lot of people off for obvious reasons. I mean, again, people absolutely hated the character of Abby so much that her voice actress got legit unhinged death threats. But in my opinion, this is a pretty genius move by Naughty Dog, the developers of the video game, by making us, the audience and the player, see the world, see the perspective of Abby through her point of view. This very much proving my point the longer that you see Abby's perspective, that she is justified in many ways for her actions, making us, the player of the video game and the viewer of the television show, come away wondering, who really is the villain of this story? Is there even a villain in The Last of Us? Or maybe that's the entire point of the story. You see, The Last of Us as a whole is very much a story about people and violence, about how ordinary people can be driven to do horrible actions, horrible acts of violence, and how they internally justify these actions. A cycle of violence, a wheel of violence, if you will. A cycle that we see that Abby and Ellie have found themselves interlocked in. It was Joel's violence, the murdering of Abby's father in order to save Ellie, that ultimately created Abby. It was Abby's violence, her brutal, fucked up killing of Joel and forcing Ellie to watch it, that ultimately created Ellie. Ellie and Abby, now two people interlocked in this cycle of violence, each seeking justified revenge, as the majority of the plot of Part 2 the video game, as well as Season 2 and 3 of the HBO series, follows Ellie on this journey to hunt down Abby. At first, it seems extremely crystal clear who the good guy and the bad guy are, who the antagonist and the protagonist are. I mean, again, we are very sympathetic to Ellie and Joel, so immediately we feel this hatred and anger towards Abby as a character, and we cheer on Ellie in her quest for revenge. But throughout the story, we start to see Ellie breaking down as a person. Ellie slowly beginning to lose her moral certainty as she is driven to do horrible things, such as that brutal interrogation scene with Nora, as well as the murder of both Owen and Mel. The death of Mel hitting us with one of the most heartbreaking and fucked up reveals that Mel is pregnant. While Nora, Owen, and Mel could all be held responsible in some sort of way for the death of Joel and the part that they played in it, Mel's unborn child was a very much innocent life. There is no possible justification for this death, and Ellie knows it. This death being one of the major breaking points, turning points even for Ellie as a character in both the show and the video game. This, in my opinion, is what makes Abby so good as an antagonist and as a villain, and what makes the story and the world of The Last of Us just so good as a whole. Abby, in her own ways, is obviously not a good person. She is cruel, she is violent, she is very much brutal. But at the same time, we see that she is loving, caring, and loyal. And at the end of the day, is very much just a product of her own environment. Something that we see when we are forced to play through her perspective in part 2 of the video game. To me, this is what makes Abby such an amazing, compelling character and such an awesome antagonist and villain, if we can even call her a villain by the time the story of The Last of Us Part 2 is finished. This overall is my favorite type of villain, a villain that is straight up justified in their actions and makes the hero, and even us the audience, question our own moral beliefs. Whether it's a character like Syndrome from The Incredibles, Magneto from X-Men, Ludinus Delath from Critical Role Campaign 3, or Abby from The Last of Us. Everyone knows you can't have a good story without a good villain, a compelling villain character, and to me, these are some of the best villains in all of media. Villains who are justified in their actions. Villains who make you wonder, are they even really bad guys? As always, guys, with these videos, these are just my thoughts and opinions, so feel free to let me know yours in the comment section down below. What do you think of Abby as a villain, as an antagonist in The Last of Us? And what are some of your favorite villains and antagonists throughout some of your favorite works of media? If you did enjoy this video, guys, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as that is the easiest way to support me, and it really does go a long way in putting this video into the algorithm. If you did enjoy this video, then why don't you check out some of my other videos and content on screen now. And as always, I hope to see you in the next one. Stay safe out there. Until next time, guys. Peace, love, Auto.